Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Bulgarian workout, and pretty much hit the same numbers today that I did yesterday. Everything good, guys, it's just about that everyday strength. It's about everyday strength. And, the thing that people need to remember, what's interesting to do on a system like this, and a lot of what I'm doing right now, is not necessarily picking the variations of the exercise that you can perform the most weight in a competitive environment, but looking at how can you recruit the most muscle mass, where it's going to give you the best carryover, and then balancing it with recovery. And it's not to say I won't eventually go over to a normal conventional deadlift instead of a deficit, or that I won't go to a wider grip bench press eventually. But a lot of this stuff comes down to, are we building strength or are we demonstrating strength? And I know people tend to think of this style of training, a lot of people think of it as peaking for competition. They think of it as, hitting your maxes, but you need to remember a lot of people do this sort of training year round. They do it year round. And so I might be using a squat version right now that allows the most, and that's because this version of the squat has the potential for the most muscle mass. Sorry, I got turned around there, forgot to turn my camera off. It has the potential for the most muscle mass recruitment, so therefore I just use it all the time. But there's a big difference between that and some of these other lifts, because obviously doing a low bar squat like I'm doing with a nice medium stance, toes out, allows a little bit more posterior chain, so you get some extra muscles involved, extra hamstring and stuff. That gives a lot of people the idea, of course, that the low bar squat doesn't build the quads, and nothing could be further from the truth. They're still a primary mover. It's kind of like people thinking that a chin up won't build your back because you get more bicep involvement, and therefore you can lift more weight than with a pull up. No, your back gets worked just as hard. In this case, some of the other muscles come in, and then your moment arms change a bit. But as long as you're working at the same RPE, like let's say you can squat 10 pounds more with a low bar than with a high bar. Well, as long as you squat the 10 pounds more, you get the same quad activation. So, in this case, I'm using, a competition version of the squat. But a couple of these other lifts, I'm not. So here we go. Here's the squat. It felt a little heavy today, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Call it RPE 9, which is what we want. We want to see right now the squat to be RPE 9 every day. As long as we stay at RPE 9, we can keep progressing. We can micro load it up. And, that's kind of the plan. Like right now, I'm going to keep adding 2.5 a week. And hopefully in 8 weeks, we start hitting that 500 every day. That's subject to change, though, based upon how I feel, things like that, meaning it could be slower. It's not going to be faster. I'm not going to risk it at this point. There's no point risking an injury or pushing too hard. I did enough of that earlier in it, and I'm ahead of schedule. Now, bench press, I'm doing the close grip. We're doing close grip. Almost no leg drive. No leg drive, actually. And a little bit of an arch. And the reason for no arch, I'm a barrel-chested guy. I've got a big rib cage naturally. That's just what I have. I've always had that. So, people think that the barrel-chested guys tend to be good at bench press. Well, unless you got really long arms like me, then it counteracts it. But the point is, I don't want a big arch right now. I need the extra range of motion. I want to do more work. And it allows me to get the same muscle stimulation with a slightly lighter weight. So that's kind of what we're doing. That's what we're doing. But the close grip today, while we're on the topic of the close grip, it was a little slow at the lockout. And that does kind of let me know something interesting. I mean, I've got plenty of speed off the chest. And usually when we're dealing with the normal bench press, there is no such thing as lockout strength, right? There's no such thing as lockout strength. That's BS. Close grip, because of the really long range of motion, maybe it might be possible. Because I do get a little slow, and I have good speed off the chest. But, there are coaches who would argue that's still not a lockout weakness. Paul Carter would say that. He would say if you just were 10% faster off the chest, it wouldn't slow down near your lockout either, would it? And that's a good point. So once you start accelerating it quick enough, you should be able to lock anything. But it could be still a bit of a tricep weakness for me. But, what are you going to do about it? I can do my overhead pressing. That's a good tricep exercise, less chest. There's a little bit of tricep involved in my chin up. But in this case, though, I wouldn't think that I need an accessory for that at this point. I'm not saying I might not go do something later. I might add some dips in later. But at this point, you're always going to have a weak link in there. Something's always going to be weak. It doesn't mean you always need an accessory. I did a long pause. Notice it slowed right there. And then I had to lock it out. But a lot of that has to do with me pausing longer. You know, the longer I pause, the slower it gets at the lockout. And that kind of comes back to that point. It's because you're not explosive enough off the chest. The hook grip's going okay. A lot of people are like, man, isn't this going to tear your thumbs up? No, they're not that bad, honestly, because I'm only doing 1 rep. And that's the thing you guys got to remember. It's not like I'm doing a bunch of volume. Doing 1 rep on this hook grip deficit pulse. And so we're going to work with 425 this week. And hopefully next week we'll step up 10 pounds. I'm going to try to jump 10 pounds if I can every week, as long as my grip holds up. And that's kind of the point. That's what we're trying to do here. Start very, very conservative, because, you know, a lot of people would question on a Bulgarian style training if you need to be deadlifting every day at all. A lot of people would argue against doing this. And I guess what it comes down to is you're still practicing a single on the deadlift. You're getting tons and tons of first reps in. You can work with a fairly heavy weight as long as you don't push it too hard. Like the way you guys see me grind on a couple of these other lifts, like I'm going to grind on the overhead press a little today. Doing that on a deadlift, probably not a real wise idea on this system. You need to stay under RPE 9. You know, arguably, I might experiment around with it later and see, but so far, it doesn't seem to be affecting my squat just yet, but I'm also going pretty light. We'll see what happens over time. I really want to mess with that more, and you guys are going to be here with me observing it every day, and we'll kind of see how it goes. We'll see how it affects everything, right? You know, it is what it is. It's a big experiment. And all of you are along with me for the ride. And maybe we'll all learn something. You guys can learn with me when it comes to how do we work deadlifts in. But same thing goes back to that other point about lifts. We're doing the deficit. Doing the deficit. Trains you to get tighter at the bottom, forces you to use a slightly lighter weight. And that'll go great with rebuilding up my grip strength and, you know, working that hook grip, because I can just gradually increase the weight on the hook grip and I don't have to go to a real heavy weight yet. It'll be months before I'm at a heavy weight. Even if I add 10 pounds a week, you know, that's 8 weeks before I even break the 500-pound mark. I've got 8 weeks to keep building my grip. Not a big deal. The press today was a little grindy. Part of it, though, I was in a lot of conversations between Brittany's got company over, one of her girlfriends is over, and, you know, all the girl chat and everything. It can make it a little difficult to concentrate and get in my zone. So maybe that was a factor. Maybe it's just fatigue. Who knows? But, you know, my press was a little grindy today. Grindier than I'd like it. I got it. I locked it. But it's grindy. And part of that is me being stubborn. Yes, I'm cutting, but I'm not losing weight fast. In fact, the scale hasn't dropped for me in over a week. So I haven't swooshed or anything. So I'm still holding some water and body weight and everything else. So it's not like the scale's gone down this week. I shouldn't be losing strength. It's a little grindy, though, near the top. We got the lockout and we held it. But it was grindy. And it is what it is. You know, it's going to happen. I'm pressing with a high frequency right now between the closed grip, bench, and the press. I'm doing both every day to a training max. You know, fatigue is going to happen as long as we keep going, though. Chin-ups weren't too bad. Did my 95 again today. And I feel like I've kind of settled in now with what I want to do with this routine. I mean, I can make changes in the exercise variations if need be. But now we're in a good groove, because I think with adding the deficit deadlift in, we get our new training stimulus. And I think that's going to carry over to everything. You know, people are like, how do you change stuff up in this? Notice you don't got to change the squat. I don't even have to change the bench if I don't want. But by adding in that deficit deadlift, what happens? I'm getting a new training stimulus on a lift that is very detrained, and I'm starting light. Every week I get to add weight. There's going to be a systematic response to that. My whole body is going to see some adaptation to that. Hopefully, that'll carry over to other lifts. So I'm hoping that that change alone will drive my next block of progress. All right? I'm hoping I don't have to change much, if anything, over the next 8 to 12 weeks, because we've added a new lift back in that is a major exercise that's detrained enough that I can readapt to it, or because, again, it's an easier variation and I'm starting light. We should see some positive training adaptation all the way through that will hopefully carry over system-wide. Because that's the point, guys. We're training our entire body with this. This isn't about biceps or quads. This is about training your body, getting stronger, causing everything to adapt to maximum loads in single reps and getting as strong as humanly possible for you. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.